Fall is a great time to plant in the desert, and this includes veggies and herbs. The soil is still warm enough to encourage root development, but the days are a little bit cooler, so it's not as stressful on the plants and they're not as demanding of water. So a few things we want to take into account are soil, irrigation, and plant selection. So for soils, we really need to add a lot of organic amendments to our soils. They're very lacking in that. All of the desert soils really are more mineral-based. We need to add compost, fully rotted manures, things like that, every time we're doing plantings throughout the seasons to build those soils up. We rarely think about roots because they're not visible, but healthy roots lead to healthy plants. So it's really worth the time and investment spent to focus on improving those soils. Next, we want to talk about irrigation. So depending on how you want to water, this really can change some of your planning. So if you're hand watering or doing drip irrigation or tying into any kind of automated system, we want to make sure you're not tying into a system that has plants that it's supporting on completely different watering schedules. So putting vegetables or high water use plants on something like a shrub or a tree line is really not going to supply enough and adequate water to these vegetables and herbs. So this can be done if you are tying into an existing line. You just would have to add some supplemental irrigation. You want to water to a depth of about a foot and a half, depending on the crops, and you probably need to water quite frequently, but not as deeply as you would shrubs and trees. So another thing to consider is plant selection. We have two short crop seasons here, really. So after the heat of summer, before the cold of winter in our fall season, as well as spring before it gets too hot in summertime. So we want to look at the days to maturity for each plant. And as long as that window fits with when we're planting the plant and when we're harvesting the plant, then those plant selections would be really fine. So longer maturing cultivars generally are not things we want to select for. And some plants that are really great for this time of year would be brassicas, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, also legumes, peas and beans. Root crops, potatoes, beets, carrots, also can be growing things like tomatoes, celery, asparagus, radishes, garlic, onions. There's a veritable number of things that could be grown here, as well as herbs. Most of the herbs do really well in our fall season. So dill, parsley, fennel, some basils, mint, oregano, thyme, a lot of things can be grown. So a few things to bear in mind if you're planting in fall is our days can still be quite hot. And so they might need a little bit of protection, at least for the first few weeks, with some shade cloth, a little bit of protection, and maybe some extra watering from the sun. And if you have wildlife present in your neighborhoods, you may need to fence or cage your veggies and herbs because they can really be nibbled down by a lot of these critters. So you want to make sure that it's you that's enjoying your harvest.